The December evening wrapped London in a blanket of frost and fog, transforming the city's grand terraces into ghostly silhouettes. Inside the Kensington residence of Lord and Lady Pemberton, the year-end celebration blazed with candlelight and laughter, the air thick with the scent of mulled wine and roasted chestnuts. Lady Amelia Worthington stood near the marble fireplace, her emerald silk gown shimmering in the golden light, desperately wishing she could vanish into the wallpaper. "My dear Lady Amelia," came the nasal voice she'd been dreading all evening. "Surely you cannot mean to deny me another dance. I have been most patient, most attentive." Earl Reginald Thornsby pressed closer, his breath reeking of brandy and desperation. At 43, with thinning hair plastered across his scalp and a stomach that strained against his waistcoat buttons, he had decided that Amelia, 22, unmarried and daughter of the Earl of Rosebery, would make an excellent fourth wife. "Earl Thornsby, I'm afraid I've developed the most dreadful headache," Amelia replied, backing toward the French doors that led to the terrace. "The heat, you understand. Then allow me to escort you for some air. The night is crisp, most refreshing." "That won't be necessary," but Thornsby's meaty hand was already reaching for her elbow. Amelia made a split-second decision. She grabbed her fur-lined cloak from a nearby chair and bolted through the French doors, her heart hammering against her corset. The terrace gave way to stone steps leading to the street. Behind her, she heard Thornsby's protests and the confused murmurs of other guests. Mortification burned her cheeks, but not as much as the thought of spending another moment in that man's company. Her satin slippers skidded on the frost-slicked pavement as she reached the street. Gas lamps cast pools of amber light through the swirling fog. A line of carriages waited along the curb, their drivers huddled in heavy coats, horses stamping restlessly in the cold. "Lady Amelia, do come back. You'll catch your death." Thornsby's voice echoed from the terrace. Panic seized her. Without thinking, Amelia yanked open the door of the nearest carriage and threw herself inside, pulling the door shut behind her. She pressed herself against the velvet seat, breathing hard, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. The interior was warm and smelled of lavender and leather. Outside, she could hear Thornsby's voice growing closer. "Excuse me," came a cheerful female voice from the darkness across from her, "but you're not Wilson, our footman." Amelia's eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the carriage windows. Sitting across from her was a young woman about her own age, with auburn curls pinned beneath a fashionable bonnet, and eyes that sparkled with unconcealed amusement. She was alone in the carriage, a book resting on her lap. I do apologize, most sincerely," Amelia stammered. "I seem to have entered the wrong carriage. That is, there was a gentleman." "Say no more." The young woman leaned forward, peering through the window. "Goodness, is that Earl Thornsby, the one who smells of mothballs and talks incessantly about his prize-winning turnips?" Despite her mortification, Amelia couldn't suppress a giggle. "The very same. You poor darling." The woman settled back with a satisfied smile. "Well, you're perfectly safe now. I'm Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, and this is my brother's carriage. He's still inside at the wretched party, suffering through conversations about parliamentary procedure. We're about to depart for Ashbourne House in Mayfair. You're welcome to stay until Earl Turnip gives up his pursuit." "Lady Beatrice, I couldn't possibly impose. It's hardly an imposition. Besides, any enemy of Earl Thornsby is a friend of mine." Beatrice studied her with open curiosity. "I'm Lady Beatrice Ashbourne. And you are?" "Lady Amelia Worthington." "Worthington? As in the Earl of Rosebery?" At Amelia's nod, Beatrice's expression brightened. "My brother knows your father. They served together in the House of Lords. This is marvelous. We're practically connected already." Before Amelia could respond, Beatrice rapped on the carriage ceiling. "Wilson, we'll wait for his grace, but we have a guest. Lady Amelia will be joining us. We'll drop her at Belgrave Square before heading home." "My lady, I really should—" "Nonsense. You're staying right here until that dreadful Earl stops prowling about." Beatrice settled back with obvious satisfaction. "Now, while we wait for my impossibly dull brother to extract himself from boring conversations, tell me, are you enjoying the season? Besides the Earl-related disasters, obviously." The question was asked with such genuine warmth that Amelia found herself relaxing. "The season has been educational, though I confess I'm finding the whole business rather exhausting." "The matrimonial market is utterly barbaric," Beatrice agreed sympathetically. All those mothers circling like hawks, gentlemen posturing like peacocks. It's exhausting and degrading for everyone involved. She paused, her expression turning thoughtful. Tell me, what do you do when you're not fleeing from unwanted suitors? What actually interests you? The question caught Amelia off guard. Most people at society events never asked what interested her, only whether she played the pianoforte adequately and if her dowry was substantial. I enjoy reading, she said slowly. History, particularly architectural history, and I manage some of my father's estate correspondence when he's occupied with parliamentary business. Architectural history? Beatrice's eyes lit up with an almost predatory gleam. How absolutely fascinating. My brother Henry, the Duke of Ashbourne, is obsessed with architecture. He's been restoring our family castle for years. Gothic this, Norman that, endless discussions about foundations and buttresses. That sounds quite interesting, actually. Does it? Beatrice leaned forward intently. Because I have to tell you something, Lady Amelia. I'm about to be terribly forward, and you're welcome to think me completely mad, but I feel this might be a sign from Providence itself. I don't understand. My brother needs a wife. Amelia blinked. I'm sorry. What? Henry. The Duke. He desperately needs to marry, but he refuses to even consider it. Beatrice's words tumbled out in a rush. And do you know why? Because he's using me as an excuse. I'm in love desperately, completely in love with Lord Philip Ravenswood, and Henry won't approve our courtship. He claims Philip is unsuitable, but really he's just being overprotective to the point of suffocation. Lady Beatrice, I'm not sure how this concerns, don't you see? If Henry had his own romantic interest, his own life beyond managing mine, he'd stop being so obsessively controlling. He'd realize that people can fall in love and be perfectly happy without his interference. He might actually give Philip a fair chance instead of just dismissing him outright. Amelia's head was spinning. You want me to... What exactly? Meet my brother. Talk to him about architecture and history and all those substantial topics you both care about. Distract him from his relentless focus on protecting me from imaginary dangers. Beatrice's expression turned earnest. I'm not asking you to fake anything, Lady Amelia. I genuinely think you and Henry would get along splendidly. You're both intellectual, passionate about similar things, interested in substance over frivolity. I just need him to see that there are wonderful people in the world worth opening his heart to. This is madness, Amelia said faintly. It's strategic, Beatrice corrected. Look, Henry has spent 10 years since our father died, being nothing but the Duke. He manages the estate, sits in Parliament, makes responsible decisions, and has completely forgotten how to simply be a person who experiences joy and love. Meanwhile, I'm 19 years old and in love with a wonderful man, but my brother won't even meet with him properly, because he's convinced himself that his only purpose in life is protecting me from potential mistakes. That sounds complicated. It's suffocating. Beatrice's frustration was palpable. I love my brother desperately, but he needs to realize that he cannot protect me from life itself, and the only way he'll understand that is if he has his own life, his own interests, his own relationships, his own happiness, beyond micromanaging mine. Despite herself, Amelia felt a flicker of sympathy. She understood familial duty and overprotective relatives. Her own father had been reluctant to allow her any independence until she'd proven herself capable with estate management. Even if I agreed to this scheme, which I'm not saying I am, your brother would have to actually be interested in me. You can't force attraction or compatibility. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm simply creating an opportunity for two compatible people to meet in circumstances where they can actually talk, instead of navigating the absurd rituals of ballroom courtship. Beatrice pulled out a small card. The London Preservation Society Symposium is next week. Henry attends every year. It's one of the few events he genuinely enjoys because it's intellectually stimulating. This is an invitation. Given your interest in architectural history, you'd be a perfect addition to the society. Amelia took the card, studying it. You're asking me to attend an architecture symposium on the chance that I might encounter your brother and distract him from his overprotective tendencies long enough that he'll reconsider his stance on your romantic life. When you say it like that, it sounds manipulative. It is manipulative, perhaps, but it's manipulative in service of everyone's happiness, which has to count for something. Beatrice's expression softened. Lady Amelia, I've watched my brother bury himself in duty for a decade. He deserves joy, he deserves love, and frankly, so do I. If you and Henry connect, genuinely connect, then everyone wins. If you don't, then we've had a pleasant afternoon at a symposium and you've made a new friend in me. What's the harm? The carriage door opened and a footman appeared. Lady Beatrice, His Grace sends word that he'll be another quarter-hour at minimum. Lord Weatherby has cornered him regarding railway investments. Beatrice groaned. Of course he has. Very well, Wilson. The footman closed the door and Beatrice turned back to Amelia. You see what I mean? My brother is trapped discussing profit margins when he'd rather be anywhere else. He needs someone to give him a reason to escape these tedious obligations. Someone who makes him remember that life is more than duty and responsibility. Amelia looked at the invitation in her hand, then at Beatrice's earnest face. This was absolutely mad. She barely knew this woman, and she was being asked to participate in what amounted to a matchmaking conspiracy designed to manipulate a duke into reconsidering his sister's romantic prospects. And yet, when was the last time someone had seen her as more than a decorative potential wife? When was the last time she'd met someone who might actually appreciate her interests in medieval architecture and estate management? The season had been an endless parade of shallow courtship rituals and calculating social maneuvers. The idea of meeting someone, even under dubious circumstances, who might value her mind as much as her family connections, was desperately appealing. I'll attend the symposium, she heard herself say. I make no promises beyond that. If your brother and I happen to meet and happen to have a conversation, so be it. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, and I won't actively manipulate him. I'm not asking you to. Beatrice's face lit up like sunrise. I'm just asking you to be yourself, your genuine, intelligent, architecturally obsessed self. And maybe, if the opportunity arises, mention that you find his preservation work at Ashbourne Castle fascinating. Because you do find it fascinating, don't you? I do, Amelia admitted. Castle restoration is incredibly complex and important work. See, perfect. That's all I'm asking, genuine interaction based on shared interests. Beatrice clasped her hands together. Oh, this is going to be wonderful. And Lady Amelia, when Henry finally realizes that I'm not a child who needs constant protection, when he actually meets Philip and sees how happy we are together, I'll owe you an enormous debt of gratitude. Footsteps approached the carriage. Beatrice's expression shifted instantly. Quick, before Henry sees you. He's rather stuffy about propriety, and I'd prefer not to explain why there's a random lady in his carriage. But just trust me, I'll send you more details about the symposium. And Lady Amelia. Beatrice squeezed her hand. Thank you. Truly. Amelia gathered her cloak and slipped out the opposite door, just as a tall, dark-haired figure in evening dress approached from the other side. She caught only a glimpse, broad shoulders, strong profile, an air of controlled authority, before she ducked behind the next carriage in line. Her heart pounded as she watched the Duke of Ashbourne climb into his carriage. Then it pulled away, disappearing into the London fog. Amelia stood on the pavement, suddenly aware that she was alone on a dark street in evening dress, having just agreed to participate in a matchmaking scheme with a woman she'd known for less than 30 minutes. She must be absolutely mad, but as she walked toward her father's townhouse, she couldn't suppress the flutter of anticipation in her chest. Perhaps madness was exactly what she needed. Behind her, Earl Thornsby's voice still echoed faintly from the Pemberton terrace, calling for his dear Lady Amelia. She didn't look back. In the Ashbourne carriage rolling toward Mayfair, Beatrice barely contained her triumphant grin. You look pleased with yourself, Henry observed, not glancing up from the correspondence he was reviewing by lamplight. Did something interesting happen while you were waiting? Oh, nothing much, Beatrice said airily. Rescued a young lady from an overzealous suitor, had a lovely conversation, made a new friend who shares your obsession with architectural history. Henry looked up. That was kind of you. Anyone I know? Lady Amelia Worthington. Her father is the Earl of Rosebery. You serve with him in the Lords, don't you? Benedict Worthington? Yes, excellent man. Good head for policy. Henry returned to his papers. I didn't realize he had a daughter of marriageable age. She's 22, quite extraordinary actually, genuinely interested in Gothic architecture, manages her father's estate correspondence, reads substantive books. Beatrice paused delicately. I thought I might invite her to tea. She'd be a refreshing change from my usual vapid acquaintances. That's fine. Henry was barely listening, already absorbed in whatever parliamentary matter occupied his attention. Perfect. Henry had no idea what was coming. Speaking of refreshing changes, Beatrice said carefully, have you given any more thought to meeting with Philip? Properly, I mean, not just dismissing him out of hand. Henry's jaw tightened. Beatrice, we've discussed this. Lord Ravenswood is wholly unsuitable. You've never even spoken to him. I've heard quite enough about his gambling debts and dueling reputation. Those debts are greatly exaggerated, and he fought one duel defending a lady's honor. That's hardly evidence of poor character. Beatrice leaned forward. Henry, I'm asking you to simply meet him. One dinner, one conversation where you actually listen with an open mind. Is that really so much to ask? It's not about asking, Henry said quietly. It's about protecting you from making a mistake that could ruin your life. I've seen too many young women marry charming fortune hunters only to find themselves trapped in miserable circumstances. I won't let that happen to you. But I'm not just any young woman. I'm your sister, and you know I'm not a fool. I can judge Philip's character for myself, if you'd just give me the chance to prove it to you. Henry rubbed his temples, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Beatrice, I'm trying to do what's best for you. I know, but Henry, her voice softened, you can't protect me from every potential disappointment. At some point, you have to trust me to make my own choices, even if they're mistakes. That's what growing up means. You're 19 years old, nearly 20, and desperately in love with a wonderful man whom you refuse to even consider, because you're so busy being my guardian that you've forgotten I'm also a person with my own judgment and desires. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of similar arguments. Finally, Henry sighed. One dinner, he said. I'll meet with Lord Ravenswood. Once. But I make no promises beyond listening. Beatrice's heart soared. That's all I ask. Oh, Henry, thank you. Don't thank me yet. If he's half as unsuitable as I suspect, this conversation will be very short. He'll surprise you, I promise. As the carriage continued toward Mayfair, Beatrice gazed out at the fog-shrouded streets, her mind already racing ahead. Henry had agreed to meet Philip. That was progress. Now she just needed to ensure he was in the right frame of mind for that meeting. Not defensive and overprotective, but open to the possibility that other people's love stories could end happily. And the best way to do that was to show him that he deserved his own love story. That's where Lady Amelia Worthington came in. By the time they reached Ashbourne House, Beatrice had the entire plan mapped out in her mind. The symposium next week would be the perfect opportunity. She'd provide Amelia with just enough information about Henry to facilitate genuine conversation, his interests, his opinions, his vulnerabilities. Not manipulation, exactly. Just strategic facilitation. If Henry had someone in his life who made him happy, who reminded him that joy and love weren't weaknesses but necessities, then he'd finally understand what Beatrice had been trying to tell him all along. Everyone deserved love, including overprotective, duty-bound dukes who'd forgotten how to be anything except responsible. Beatrice smiled to herself. This was going to work. It had to work, because she was running out of time. Philip had been patient for months, but he wouldn't wait forever. And Beatrice wasn't willing to choose between the brother she loved and the man who'd captured her heart. Somehow, she had to save them all. 3 days later, Amelia sat in the morning room of her father's townhouse, staring at 2 items that had arrived with the Morning Post: the formal invitation to the London Preservation Society Symposium and a sealed letter bearing the Ashbourne crest. She opened the letter with trembling fingers. Dear Lady Amelia, I do hope this letter finds you well, and that Earl Thornsby has ceased his persistent attentions. I wanted to thank you again for the delightful conversation during your unexpected visit to my brother's carriage. It is so rare to meet someone with genuine intellectual curiosity and substance. I am writing to invite you to tea on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock at Ashbourne House. I realize we've only just met, but I felt an immediate kinship with you, and I would very much enjoy continuing our acquaintance. I should mention that I've also taken the liberty of securing your membership to the London Preservation Society. The symposium next week should be fascinating, and I thought you might enjoy attending with a friend rather than navigating it alone. If you're amenable, I'd love to discuss the symposium over tea and perhaps share a few details about my impossible brother that might make your attendance even more interesting. Yours in conspiracy, Lady Beatrice Ashbourne. Despite herself, Amelia laughed. Beatrice's audacity was almost admirable. She was brazenly acknowledging the matchmaking scheme while somehow making it feel like a friendly collaboration rather than manipulation. "Will you accept, my lady?" Margaret asked, arranging fresh flowers on the side table. "I shouldn't," Amelia said. "This entire situation is absurd. I barely know Lady Beatrice, and she's asking me to help orchestrate her brother's romantic life so he'll approve her own courtship. It's like something from a farcical novel." "But you're going to accept anyway," Margaret observed knowingly. "I'm going to accept anyway," Amelia admitted. "Heaven help me. I'm actually curious now. About the symposium, about the Duke, about this whole ridiculous situation." She penned her acceptance and sent it with a footman. Thursday afternoon arrived with crisp winter sunshine that made London's grey stones gleam like pewter. Amelia dressed carefully in a day dress of deep blue wool, elegant but not overly elaborate. She wanted to look presentable without appearing as though she'd tried too hard. Ashbourne House was even more imposing in daylight, a testament to centuries of wealth and power, standing proud in the heart of Mayfair. The butler led her through corridors lined with paintings of stern-faced ancestors and into a sunny morning room where Beatrice waited. "Lady Amelia, I'm so delighted you came." Beatrice embraced her warmly. "I was worried you'd think better of our mad scheme and send your regrets." "I very nearly did," Amelia admitted. "I'm still not entirely convinced this isn't a terrible idea." "Oh, it's definitely a terrible idea by conventional standards," Beatrice agreed cheerfully, gesturing to the tea service. "But conventional standards have left my brother lonely and me trapped in an endless battle over my own romantic future. Sometimes terrible ideas are exactly what's needed." As they settled with tea and lemon biscuits, Amelia found herself relaxing despite her reservations. Beatrice had that rare gift of making people feel immediately at ease, as if they'd been friends for years rather than days. "So," Beatrice said, setting down her cup, "shall we discuss the elephant in the room? Or rather, the Duke? I suppose we must. First, I want you to understand my brother's situation. This isn't just about me wanting to marry Philip, though I do want that desperately. It's about Henry needing to remember that life is more than duty and responsibility." Beatrice's expression turned serious, the playful mask slipping to reveal genuine concern underneath. "Our father died 10 years ago, heart seizure in the House of Lords, sudden, shocking, and it left everything in chaos. Papa was brilliant but disorganized, and when Henry inherited at 20, he discovered the estate was a mess. Debts, poor investments, properties in disrepair, dozens of unresolved legal matters. That must have been overwhelming," Amelia said softly. "It nearly destroyed him. I was only 9, so I didn't fully understand at the time. But I remember him working 18-hour days, barely sleeping, barely eating. He fixed everything, saved the estate, paid off the debts, restored the family's reputation. But in the process, he forgot how to be Henry. He became the Duke first and a person second. And now he's overcompensating by trying to protect you from any potential mistake." "Precisely." Beatrice leaned forward. "He's convinced that if he'd been more prepared, more vigilant, somehow Father's death wouldn't have left such disaster. It's not rational, but it drives everything he does now, including refusing to even consider that Philip might be a good man who genuinely loves me. Why is he so opposed to Lord Ravenswood specifically? Philip is the second son of the Marquis of Rutherford, which should make him perfectly respectable. But he has some gambling debts inherited from his late father's poor investments, and he fought a duel last year, defending Lady Catherine Pemberton's honour when a gentleman made inappropriate remarks about her. Somehow those facts have transformed into fortune-hunting, duel-prone scoundrel in Henry's mind. Have you tried explaining the actual circumstances? He won't listen. Every time I bring up Philip's name, Henry starts lecturing me about my youth and inexperience and how I deserve better than a man with questionable character." Beatrice's frustration was palpable. "I love my brother, but he's suffocating me with his protection. And the worst part is, I know he means well. That's what makes it so impossible. Amelia found herself deeply sympathizing. She understood familial love tangled with frustration, the difficulty of asserting independence while maintaining precious relationships. So your plan is to distract him with a romantic interest of his own. My plan is to help him see that people, including me, are capable of making good decisions about love without his intervention. If Henry experiences genuine connection with someone, if he allows himself to be vulnerable and discovers that the world doesn't end when he stops controlling everything, Beatrice met Amelia's eyes, then maybe he'll trust that I can handle my own heart. That's a lot of weight to put on one potential courtship. I know, but I'm running out of options. Philip has been patient for months, but he won't wait forever. And I refuse to choose between my brother and the man I love. Her voice dropped. Please, Amelia, I need your help. The vulnerability in Beatrice's voice was genuine. This wasn't a frivolous girl playing at matchmaking. This was someone genuinely desperate to salvage the two most important relationships in her life. Very well, Amelia said quietly. I'll attend the symposium. I'll meet your brother if the opportunity arises naturally. But Beatrice, I need you to understand something. I won't build a relationship on deliberate deception. If your brother and I connect, it needs to be genuine. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not just to serve your purposes. I would never ask you to. That's why you're perfect for this. You are genuinely interested in architecture and history and all the things Henry cares about. I'm not asking you to fake anything. I'm just helping facilitate a connection that might not happen otherwise, because my brother is terrible at social situations, and you're probably too polite to approach a duke uninvited. So what exactly are you proposing? Beatrice pulled out her small leather notebook. I'm going to give you some information about Henry, his interests, his opinions, his preferences. Not so you can manipulate him, but so you can avoid common conversational pitfalls and find areas of genuine compatibility. Think of it as reconnaissance for friendship. That sounds dangerously close to manipulation. It's strategic conversation management, Beatrice insisted. Every mama in London researches eligible bachelors before positioning their daughters. Every diplomatic dinner involves advance intelligence about guests' interests and sensitivities. This is just applied social strategy. Amelia took a deep breath. What kind of information are we talking about? Well, for instance, Henry's passionate about Gothic architecture, particularly the preservation versus modernization debate. He believes historical value usually outweighs efficiency concerns, but he's not dogmatic. He respects well-reasoned counter-arguments. Beatrice flipped through her notebook. He's also read Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire 6 times. He's obsessed with understanding how civilizations crumble, probably because he's terrified of letting the Ashbourne legacy fail. Despite her reservations, Amelia found herself leaning forward with interest. What else? He hates crowds and tends to retreat to quiet corners at social events. He appreciates directness over social games. If you have an opinion, state it clearly, rather than hinting politely. He's also... Beatrice paused, her expression softening. He's desperately lonely, Amelia. He's surrounded by people who want things from him, advice, money, influence, but very few who just want him. If you can see past the duke to the man beneath, if you can engage with Henry rather than the title, that would mean everything. The loneliness in Beatrice's description resonated with something in Amelia's own experience. How many men had courted her title and dowry without ever seeing her? How many social interactions had been calculated transactions rather than genuine connections? I'll do my best, she said finally, but I need you to promise me something in return. Anything. If this goes badly, if your brother discovers what we're doing and feels betrayed, you'll take full responsibility. I won't be made the villain in someone else's family drama. Agreed, though I don't think it will come to that. Beatrice smiled. I have a good feeling about this, Amelia. I think you and Henry might actually be perfect for each other, not just for my purposes, but genuinely. We'll see. Amelia took a sip of tea. Now, tell me everything I need to know about the Duke of Ashbourne. For the next 2 hours, Beatrice talked. She described Henry's daily routines, his opinions on everything from land reform to railway expansion, his habits when troubled or overwhelmed. She painted a picture of a man trapped by duty, brilliant but isolated, desperate for genuine connection but too afraid of vulnerability to pursue it. By the time Amelia left Ashbourne House that evening, her head was spinning with information. And despite all her reservations about the ethics of the situation, she couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation in her chest. In 4 days, she would attend the symposium. In 4 days, she would meet the Duke of Ashbourne. And somehow she would try to be honest, while carrying the weight of Beatrice's desperate hopes and carefully curated intelligence. What could possibly go wrong? The London Preservation Society Symposium was everything Beatrice had promised. Intellectually stimulating, mercifully free of social posturing, and filled with people who genuinely cared about architectural conservation rather than gossip and status. Amelia arrived early, her nerves fluttering despite her best efforts at composure. She wore a practical day dress of forest green, her hair arranged simply. No artifice, no excessive elegance, just herself, ready to discuss medieval foundations and Gothic architecture with people who actually cared. The main hall of Somerset House was filled with displays of architectural drawings, scale models of restoration projects, and clusters of serious-looking gentlemen discussing masonry techniques. Amelia was one of only a handful of women present, but no one seemed to find her presence unusual. The Preservation Society was progressive in that respect. She drifted toward a display about Westminster Abbey's restoration, studying the detailed drawings of triforium stabilization work, when a deep voice behind her said, "The perpendicular Gothic work is particularly impressive. They've managed to stabilize the structure without compromising the original stonework." Amelia turned and found herself face to face with the Duke of Ashbourne. He was even more striking than her brief glimpse by the carriage had suggested. Dark hair slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it while absorbed in study. Strong aristocratic features that might have been intimidating if not softened by genuinely intelligent eyes, the color of aged whiskey. Tall and broad-shouldered in a way that suggested physical capability beneath his impeccably tailored coat. He looked at her with polite interest, clearly expecting a response to his comment about the Abbey. All of Beatrice's carefully provided information flooded Amelia's mind. He loves Gothic architecture. He appreciates directness. He values genuine intellectual engagement over social performance. "The triforium stabilization is remarkable," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Though I wonder if they've adequately addressed the water damage in the lower chambers. Stone conservation is only effective if the underlying moisture issues are resolved first." Interest sparked immediately in his expression, exactly as Beatrice had predicted. "Precisely my concern. The surveyor's report mentioned drainage improvements, but the details were frustratingly vague. One can't simply treat symptoms while ignoring root causes." "That would be like putting fresh plaster over a damp wall and expecting it to hold," Amelia agreed. "The fundamental problem remains." "Exactly." Henry's whole demeanor shifted, the polite mask falling away to reveal genuine enthusiasm. "I've been trying to explain this to the Restoration Committee, but they're so focused on timeline and budget that they're not thinking about long-term structural integrity." They talked easily for several minutes about Westminster Abbey, about the challenges of historical preservation, about the tension between authenticity and modern building codes. Henry was articulate and passionate, his expertise obvious in every comment, and Amelia realized with a start that she wasn't following Beatrice's script at all. She'd forgotten about the carefully prepared information, forgotten about strategic conversation management. She was simply talking to someone who shared her genuine interests, who valued her opinions and built on her ideas, rather than dismissing or patronizing her. This was what she'd been missing all season: real conversation, intellectual engagement, recognition as a thinking person rather than a decorative potential wife. "Forgive me," Henry said suddenly. "I'm monopolizing your time with enthusiastic rambling about drainage systems. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Ashbourne, Henry Ashbourne. Lady Amelia Worthington," she curtsied. Recognition flickered across his face. "Worthington? Is your father the Earl of Rosebery?" "He is. I serve with him in the Lords. Excellent mind for policy, particularly regarding agricultural reform." Henry smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face, though he's never mentioned having a daughter interested in architectural conservation. He tends to discuss grain yields and crop rotation when we talk. He doesn't usually advertise my unusual interests, Amelia admitted. Most people find discussions of medieval drainage systems decidedly unladylike. Then most people are fools. The words came out immediate and emphatic. Henry looked slightly embarrassed by his own vehemence. What I mean is, intelligence and education should be celebrated regardless of one's sex. The notion that ladies should confine themselves to watercolors and embroidery is absurd and wasteful of human potential. I wish more gentlemen shared your view. As do I. He gestured toward the Abbey display. Have you visited the restoration site yourself? They're conducting tours for society members. I haven't had the opportunity yet. You should. The chapter house work is extraordinary. 13th century tile floors being restored using period-appropriate techniques. I attended a demonstration last month. He paused, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. I'm doing it again, aren't I? Monologuing about architectural minutiae while you're too polite to escape. Amelia laughed, genuinely delighted by his self-awareness. Actually, I'm fascinated. Please continue. What techniques are they using? Henry's expression brightened, and he launched into a detailed explanation of medieval tile-making methods and modern restoration challenges. Amelia listened, asked questions, offered her own observations. The conversation flowed naturally between them, building momentum as they discovered more shared interests and compatible viewpoints. An hour passed without Amelia noticing. They'd moved from the Abbey display to a lecture on Norman castle construction, then to a demonstration of stone conservation techniques. Henry was everything Beatrice had described: passionate, intelligent, slightly awkward in social situations, but completely comfortable discussing substantive topics. More importantly, he looked at her, really looked at her as if her thoughts and opinions mattered as much as his own. When another gentleman approached, the dreaded Lord Wetherby, whom Beatrice had mentioned, Henry's jaw tightened with visible frustration. Ashbourne, just the man I wanted to see. We need to discuss the railway expansion through Derbyshire. There's significant profit potential if we can navigate the preservation concerns. Lord Wetherby, perhaps another time. Nonsense, won't take a moment. These preservation fellows are all well and good, but progress demands certain sacrifices of sentiment. Amelia caught Henry's eye and saw genuine distress. He wanted to escape, but was too polite to simply walk away. Too trapped by duty and social obligation to prioritize his own desires, just like Beatrice had described. "Excuse me, Lord Wetherby," Amelia interrupted smoothly. "I've just remembered I promised to examine the Gothic Revival display in the East Gallery before the afternoon lectures begin. Your Grace, would you escort me? I'm not entirely certain of the location." Relief flooded Henry's features. "Of course, Lady Amelia. Wetherby, we'll continue this discussion another time. Good day." He offered his arm and they escaped together, both slightly breathless from their flight. "Thank you," Henry said once they'd reached a quiet alcove overlooking the Thames. "Wetherby means well, but once he starts discussing railway investments, there's no escape short of feigning sudden illness. I noticed you looked rather desperate. That's the burden of the title. Everyone wants something: advice, investment, influence, connections. Sometimes I feel less like a person and more like a walking repository of ducal resources." The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected. This wasn't the controlled, reserved Duke Beatrice had described. This was someone genuinely exhausted by the weight of constant demands. "That sounds lonely," Amelia said quietly. Henry looked at her, surprise evident in his expression. "Most people don't see it that way. They see privilege and power, not isolation. Privilege and isolation aren't mutually exclusive. You can have every material advantage and still feel utterly alone." "Yes." The single word held volumes of acknowledgement. Exactly that. They stood in the alcove, the noise of the symposium fading to background murmur. Through the windows, the Thames glittered in the afternoon sun, boats gliding past like time itself made visible. "Lady Amelia," Henry said slowly, "may I be honest with you? I would prefer honesty to polite platitudes. This has been the most genuinely enjoyable conversation I've had in months, possibly years. You're not angling for anything, not positioning yourself advantageously, not calculating social benefit. You're just yourself. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Guilt stabbed through Amelia's chest. He thought she was being completely genuine, unaware that she'd come armed with information about his interests, his vulnerabilities, his preferences. That she was here at least partially because his sister had orchestrated this meeting as part of a larger scheme. "Your Grace." "Henry," he interrupted. "When we're discussing architecture and drainage systems, I think we can dispense with excessive formality. Call me Henry." "Henry, then." Her voice wavered slightly. "I should tell you something. Would you permit me to call on you?" The question tumbled out in a rush, as if he'd been gathering courage. "Properly, with your father's permission. I would very much like to continue this conversation." Amelia's heart soared, even as guilt intensified. This was working exactly as Beatrice had planned. Henry was interested, engaged, clearly attracted to the connection they'd formed, and it was built on a foundation of calculated information and orchestrated circumstances. But her enjoyment had been genuine. Her interest in him was real. The connection she felt, that was authentic, wasn't it? "I would like that very much," she heard herself say. "Excellent." Henry's smile was transformative, pure joy breaking through aristocratic reserve. "I'll call on Tuesday, if that's agreeable." Tuesday would be perfect. That evening, Beatrice appeared at Amelia's townhouse, barely containing her excitement. "Tell me everything. Did you meet him? Did you speak? What did he say?" Amelia led her into the drawing room, checking to ensure they had privacy. "Your plan worked. We spoke for over an hour. He's calling on Tuesday." "I knew it!" Beatrice grabbed her hands, spinning her around like they were children. "I knew you two would be perfect together. What did you talk about?" "Architecture, mostly. Westminster Abbey, stone conservation, his restoration work at Ashbourne Castle." Amelia pulled her hands free, pacing toward the fireplace. "Beatrice, I feel terrible." "Why? You were wonderful." Henry was clearly enchanted. "Because I went there armed with information you'd given me. I knew exactly what topics would interest him, what opinions he held, even how to rescue him from Lord Wetherby. It felt like I was following a script you'd written." "You weren't following a script. You were having a genuine conversation with helpful context. That's not manipulation, that's just being prepared. It's manipulation disguised as preparation." "It's strategic." Beatrice sat on the sofa, her expression turning serious. "Amelia, listen to me. Did you fake your interest in architecture?" "No, but..." "Did you pretend to have opinions you don't actually hold?" "Of course not." "Did you lie about who you are, or what you value?" "No." "Then what exactly did you do that was dishonest?" Beatrice met her eyes steadily. "You had an intellectually stimulating conversation with a compatible person. The fact that I gave you some advance information simply meant you avoided wasting time on unsuccessful topics. Would you prefer to have stood there awkwardly, trying random subjects until something worked, or worse, not speaking to him at all because you were too intimidated by his title? When you put it that way, it sounds completely reasonable, doesn't it?" Beatrice smiled. "Look, I gave you a map of the territory, but you still had to navigate it yourself, and from what you've told me, you did that brilliantly. Henry is notoriously difficult to truly engage. If he's calling on you Tuesday, that means something genuine happened between you. That's real, Amelia, that's not artifice." Amelia wanted to believe her, desperately wanted to believe that the connection she'd felt with Henry was legitimate, despite its orchestrated origins. "What's the next step?" she asked. "Now we deepen the connection. Make Henry realize he can't imagine his life without you in it." Beatrice's eyes sparkled. "Which means providing you with more helpful context. Not manipulation, just information that will help you understand him better." "Beatrice, his favorite book is Gibbon's Decline and Fall. He's read it 6 times, completely obsessed with understanding societal collapse. He takes his tea with 1 sugar, no milk. His political opinions lean progressive on social issues, but conservative on fiscal policy. He works in the library until 2 in the morning when he's troubled by estate problems. He..." "Stop." Amelia held up her hand. "I can't do this. I can't build a relationship on calculated information gathering. It's not right. It's not calculated, it's considerate. You're learning about him. I'm studying him like a subject for examination. And when he inevitably discovers what we're doing, because these things always come out, he'll feel betrayed and manipulated. Everything genuine between us will be tainted by the deception of how it began." Beatrice's expression turned pleading. "Just a little more help. Just enough to get through the initial courtship phase. Once you're established, once he's committed, then you can be completely honest. That's backwards. Honesty should come first, not after emotional investment. Amelia crossed to the window, looking out at the darkening square. I like your brother, Beatrice. I genuinely like him. The conversation we had today was the most intellectually fulfilling exchange I've had in years, but I won't continue building something real on a foundation of strategic manipulation. So what are you saying? I'm saying that when Henry calls on Tuesday, I'm going to tell him the truth. About how we met, about your scheme, about the information you provided. I'll let him decide whether he wants to continue the acquaintance knowing its origins. He'll be furious. He'll think the worst of both of us. Perhaps. But that's better than building something on lies and having it collapse later when the truth inevitably surfaces. Amelia turned from the window. I'm sorry, Beatrice. I know you meant well. I know you're desperate to help your brother and secure your own happiness, but I can't be party to this kind of deception. Beatrice stood, her expression cycling through emotions: anger, fear, desperation, resignation. Finally, she nodded slowly. You're right. I know you're right. She moved toward the door, then paused. Amelia, whatever happens, I really do think you and Henry could be wonderful together. I wasn't wrong about that. I just went about it entirely the wrong way. I know. And I appreciate what you were trying to do, even if the method was flawed. After Beatrice left, Amelia stood in the drawing room, her heart heavy with the decision she'd made. On Tuesday she would tell Henry everything, and likely watch whatever connection they'd begun to form crumble under the weight of revelation. But at least her conscience would be clear. At least she'd have chosen honesty over convenience, even if it cost her the most interesting man she'd ever met. Tuesday afternoon arrived with grey skies threatening rain. Amelia dressed carefully in a gown of deep burgundy, elegant but sober, appropriate for the conversation she was about to have. Margaret arranged her hair simply, sensing her mistress's tension, but wisely remaining silent. He'll understand, Margaret said finally. If he's half the man you've described, he'll appreciate your honesty, or he'll feel betrayed and never speak to me again. Then he wouldn't have been worth it anyway. Amelia wished she shared Margaret's confidence. The Duke of Ashbourne arrived precisely at 3 o'clock, as punctual as one would expect from a man who valued order and responsibility. The butler showed him into the drawing room where Amelia waited, her father discreetly present, as propriety demanded, but seated far enough away to allow private conversation. Henry looked nervous. It was endearing, this powerful, composed duke who commanded respect from Parliament and society, visibly anxious about a simple afternoon call. Lady Amelia, he bowed. Thank you for receiving me. Your Grace, please, sit. She gestured to the chair across from her. They managed perhaps 5 minutes of stilted pleasantries about the weather and the symposium before Amelia couldn't bear it anymore. Henry, I need to tell you something. Before we continue this, whatever this is becoming, you need to know the truth about how we met. His expression shifted immediately to wariness. I thought we met at the symposium. We did, but that meeting wasn't as coincidental as it appeared. Amelia took a deep breath. 3 days before the symposium, I fled a party to escape an unwanted suitor. I panicked and jumped into the wrong carriage, which happened to belong to your sister. Beatrice was inside alone waiting for you. Henry's face had gone very still. We talked while she waited. She told me about you, about your restoration work, your interests, your... Amelia forced herself to continue. Your loneliness. She said you needed a wife, and she thought I would be perfect for you. I see. His voice was carefully neutral. And did my sister happen to mention why she was suddenly so interested in arranging my matrimonial future? She did. She's in love with Lord Philip Ravenswood, and you won't approve the match. She thought if you had your own romantic interest, you might be less overprotective of her choices. So this was a conspiracy. Each word was precisely enunciated. Controlled fury barely contained beneath ducal composure. My sister decided to manipulate my romantic life to serve her own purposes, and you agreed to be her instrument. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? Let me guess the sequence of events. Beatrice invited you to tea. She gave you information about my interests, my preferences, my vulnerabilities. She secured your invitation to the symposium, an event she knew I would attend. She coached you on exactly what to say to capture my attention. The accuracy of his summary was damning. Amelia felt tears burning her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Yes, she said quietly. All of that happened. I won't lie to you about it. How thoughtful. Honesty after the deception has already served its purpose. He stood, moving toward the window, his back rigid with anger. Tell me, Lady Amelia, was any of it real? Our conversation about Westminster Abbey, your interest in architecture, or were you just performing your role in my sister's little theatrical? My interest was genuine. Everything I said about architecture, about preservation, about my own passions, that was all true. Beatrice didn't tell me what opinions to have. She just gave me context, information that helped me understand you better. Information that you used to manipulate me into believing we had some kind of genuine connection. We did have a genuine connection. Amelia stood, moving toward him. Yes, Beatrice told me what topics would interest you, but our conversation went far beyond anything she could have scripted. The way we challenged each other's ideas, the intellectual excitement of finding someone who truly understood, that was real, Henry. That was us, not her scheme. How can I possibly know what was real and what was calculated? He turned from the window, and the hurt in his eyes broke her heart. Every word you said, every opinion you expressed, every moment I thought we were truly connecting, it's all tainted now. I don't know if I was falling for you or for a performance. You were falling for me. The real me. She crossed the room, stopping just in front of him. Yes, I came to that symposium knowing what topics might interest you. But everything after that, every laugh, every debate, every moment of genuine recognition, that was authentic. Beatrice gave me a doorway, but I walked through it as myself, as Amelia, not as some character playing a role. And I'm supposed to simply trust that? Trust the woman who's just admitted to deceiving me from the very beginning? No. Amelia's voice broke. You're supposed to be furious with me. You're supposed to feel betrayed and manipulated because you were. What Beatrice and I did was wrong. I should have told you immediately, at the symposium, or certainly before today. I should never have agreed to the scheme in the first place. Then why did you? Because I was lonely too. The words burst out, raw and honest. Because I've spent an entire season being courted by men who only see my dowry and family connections. Because no one has ever asked what actually interests me or valued my opinions on anything substantive. Because when Beatrice described you, a man who might appreciate intelligence and genuine conversation, I was desperate enough to compromise my ethics for a chance at real connection. She turned away, unable to bear looking at his face anymore. I'm not defending what I did. It was manipulative and wrong, and you have every right to walk out of here and never speak to me again. But Henry, please believe this one thing. My feelings became real. Somewhere between discussions of Norman fortifications and your stories about restoring Ashbourne Castle, I fell in love with you. Not the Duke, you. The man who gets passionate about medieval drainage systems and carries the weight of legacy with such grace. The man who's lonely and brilliant and desperately in need of someone who sees him rather than his title. The silence stretched unbearably. Rain began pattering against the windows, soft and insistent. Why tell me now? Henry asked finally. You could have continued the deception. I was clearly infatuated enough not to question too closely. You could have secured the engagement, the marriage, everything Beatrice wanted for both of us. Why confess? Because I couldn't build a life with you on a foundation of lies. Because you deserve honesty, even when it costs me everything I've begun to want. Amelia finally let the tears fall. Because I'd rather lose you now with my integrity intact than keep you through continued deception and lose myself in the process. She heard him move, felt him step closer behind her. Then his hands were on her shoulders, turning her gently to face him. You're crying, he said, and there was wonder in his voice rather than anger. Of course I'm crying. I've just destroyed any chance of happiness with the first man who's ever truly seen me. I'm allowed to cry about that. The first man who's ever truly seen you, Henry repeated slowly. Is that really how you see me? That's how I know you. Not from Beatrice's information, but from our conversation. From the way you listen to my opinions about stone conservation as if they mattered. From how your whole face changes when you talk about something you love. From the vulnerability you showed when you admitted feeling like a walking repository of ducal resources. She reached up, touching his face gently. I know you, Henry Ashbourne. Maybe I took a shortcut to meeting you. Maybe the circumstances were manipulative and wrong. But what happened after that? What's still happening between us right now? This is real. This is honest. This is me, completely without artifice, telling you that I love you, and I'm desperately sorry for how badly I've handled everything. Henry caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. His eyes searched hers, looking for truth, for authenticity, for some assurance that he wasn't being played for a fool. I'm terrified, he admitted. Terrified to trust this. Terrified that I'm just seeing what I want to see because I'm so bloody lonely that I'd rather believe a beautiful lie than face another decade of isolation. Then don't trust me yet. Let me prove it to you. Amelia's voice strengthened with determination. Give me a chance to show you who I really am. No scripts, no information from Beatrice, no strategic conversation management. Just me, honestly and completely, for as long as it takes for you to believe that what we have is genuine. And what about my sister's scheme? Her plans for Philip? I don't know. That's between you and Beatrice. I can't solve your family dynamics. I can only be honest about my own role in them. Henry was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Finally he spoke. My father used to say that the measure of a person isn't in avoiding mistakes, but in how they handle them once made. That integrity isn't perfection. It's honesty when honesty is most difficult. Your father sounds like he was wise. He was. Disorganized and impractical, but wise about what mattered. Henry released her hand, stepping back slightly. Amelia, what you and Beatrice did was wrong. The manipulation, the calculated orchestration, using my vulnerabilities as tools for your own purposes. That was wrong, and it hurt. I know. But, he held up a hand, you also did something remarkable. You chose honesty over convenience. You confessed when you could have continued the deception. You prioritized integrity over your own desires. That, he paused, something like wonder crossing his face. That's exactly the kind of character I've been searching for. Someone who values truth more than advantage. Hope flickered in Amelia's chest. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm still furious with both of you. I'm saying I feel manipulated and betrayed, and it will take time to fully trust again. But I'm also saying, he reached for her hand again, I think my initial instinct was right. I think we might genuinely be suited for each other. Not because Beatrice orchestrated it, but because underneath all her meddling there's real compatibility, real connection. So, you're willing to try? To start over, honestly this time. I'm willing to try, slowly, carefully, with absolute honesty from this point forward. His expression turned stern. But Amelia, if there are any other secrets, any other deceptions, no matter how small, now is the time to reveal them. I need complete transparency moving forward. No more secrets. I promise. And I need to have a very serious conversation with my sister. She meant well, she really did. She just went about it entirely the wrong way. That seems to be a theme with Beatrice. Henry sighed. I suppose I should also have a proper conversation with Lord Ravenswood. If my sister went to such elaborate lengths to arrange my romantic life, her feelings for him must be genuine. I think they are. They stood in the drawing room, rain tapping against the windows, the air between them charged with possibility and cautious hope. Amelia's father had discreetly withdrawn at some point during their intense conversation, granting them privacy for what mattered most. Henry, Amelia said quietly, I really do love you. Not the Duke of Ashbourne. You, Henry, the man who gets excited about 13th century tile floors and carries the weight of the world with quiet grace. I love you, and I will spend however long it takes proving that truth to you. I believe you. His voice was soft but certain, not because the words are pretty, but because you chose honesty when it cost you everything. That's the kind of love worth building on. He pulled her closer, and this time when their lips met it wasn't calculated or orchestrated. It was simply two people, flawed and honest, choosing each other despite the messy complications of how they'd found their way together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Amelia laughed shakily. Beatrice is going to be insufferably smug about this. Undoubtedly, though I plan to make her suffer through a very stern lecture first. Henry smiled, and it was that transformative expression she'd seen at the symposium, pure joy breaking through aristocratic reserve. But after I've properly scolded her for manipulative meddling, I suppose I'll have to thank her. However misguided her methods, she did ultimately introduce me to you. So you forgive her? Eventually, after sufficient groveling and promises never to interfere in my personal life again. His expression turned mischievous. Though I suppose I should meet this Lord Ravenswood. She's so desperate to marry. If she went to such elaborate lengths, he must be either exceptional or she's completely delusional. From what she's told me, he's quite wonderful. And his faults are largely exaggerated. We'll see. Henry offered his arm. Shall we inform your father that his daughter has just agreed to court a duke who was nearly driven away by romantic conspiracy? That should make for an interesting conversation. They walked together toward the door, and Amelia felt the last of her anxiety dissolving. Yes, they'd begun badly. Yes, trust would take time to fully rebuild. But they were beginning honestly now, with all the cards on the table and genuine connection underlying everything. Sometimes the wrong path could still lead to the right destination. Sometimes love that began with manipulation could transform into something purely authentic. And sometimes the best foundation for the future was the courage to be completely, vulnerably honest, even when honesty threatened to destroy everything you'd just begun to hope for. 3 weeks later, Ashbourne House hosted a dinner party. The guest list was small but significant. Lord and Lady Worthington, Lord Philip Ravenswood, and of course Beatrice and Amelia herself. Henry had insisted on the dinner after his initial meeting with Philip had gone surprisingly well. The young man was intelligent, articulate, genuinely devoted to Beatrice, and far more responsible than gossip suggested. His debts were manageable, his duel genuinely honourable, and his love for Beatrice absolutely evident. Henry had found himself liking the man despite his best efforts to find fault. Now, as they gathered around the table, Beatrice could barely contain her excitement. She kept glancing between Henry and Philip, between Amelia and her brother, as if she still couldn't quite believe her scheme had somehow worked, despite its spectacular near disaster. "Lady Beatrice," the Earl of Rosebery said with dry humour, "I understand you played matchmaker for my daughter and your brother. Rather bold of you." Beatrice had the grace to look embarrassed. "I may have facilitated their introduction, though events took a rather complicated turn when Amelia decided honesty was more important than my careful planning. As it should be," Henry said firmly. "Though I'll admit the outcome has been—" He looked at Amelia, his expression softening. "Unexpectedly wonderful. So you've forgiven her machinations?" Philip asked, amused. "I've forgiven her. After extensive grovelling, multiple apologies, and a solemn promise never to interfere in my personal affairs again." "Which I've kept," Beatrice protested. "I haven't meddled once in the past 3 weeks." "You tried to suggest which flowers Amelia should prefer," Henry pointed out. "That wasn't meddling, that was helpful advice about garden aesthetics." The table laughed, and Amelia felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was what she'd been missing all season. Not perfect social performance, but genuine connection. Not calculated advancement, but honest relationships built on mutual respect and affection. Henry caught her eye across the table and smiled, and her heart did its now familiar flutter. "Well," said the Countess of Rosebery, "I for one am grateful to Lady Beatrice. However unconventional her methods, they've introduced my daughter to a man who actually appreciates her mind as much as her family connections. That's rarer than rubies in my experience." "Speaking of which," Henry said, pulling a small box from his pocket, "I've been meaning to give this to Amelia, though perhaps now, with family present, is the perfect time." Amelia's breath caught as he stood and moved to kneel beside her chair. "Lady Amelia Worthington, our courtship began in the most unconventional manner possible. We've navigated deception, confronted manipulation, and somehow found genuine love in the midst of my sister's scheming." His eyes held hers, warm and certain. "I've spent 3 weeks getting to know you honestly, the real you, without scripts or strategies. And every day has only confirmed what I suspected from that first conversation at the symposium. You're extraordinary. You challenge me intellectually, match me in passion for history and preservation, and possess the kind of integrity that chose truth over advantage, even when it cost you everything. He opened the box, revealing a sapphire ring that caught the candlelight beautifully. Will you marry me? Not the Duke of Ashbourne, but me, Henry. Will you build a life with me based on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love? Will you let me spend the rest of my days proving that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings? Amelia's vision blurred with tears, but she was smiling so broadly her face hurt. Yes, absolutely yes, to all of it. Henry slipped the ring onto her finger, and the table erupted in applause and cheers. Beatrice was openly weeping with joy, Philip was grinning, and both sets of parents were beaming with approval. I have an announcement as well, Henry said, returning to his seat but keeping Amelia's hand in his. I've given considerable thought to Lord Ravenswood's suit, and after spending time getting to know him properly, he looked at Beatrice. I give my blessing to your courtship, with the understanding that you'll wait at least 6 months before formalizing any engagement, and that Philip will demonstrate financial responsibility by managing our Yorkshire estate during that period. Beatrice squealed and threw herself at her brother, nearly knocking over a wineglass in her enthusiasm. Oh, Henry, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, well, he extracted himself with amused dignity. Try not to orchestrate anyone else's romantic life in gratitude. Once was quite enough. I make no promises, Beatrice said, her eyes sparkling. After all, I have a perfect track record, 1 attempt, 1 successful engagement, and a brother who's finally happy. I might take up matchmaking professionally. Absolutely not, Henry and Amelia said in unison, then laughed at their synchronicity. As the dinner continued, as conversation flowed about wedding plans and future arrangements, as Philip and Beatrice made eyes at each other across the table, as parents discussed the practical details of aristocratic unions, Amelia felt a profound sense of rightness. Yes, their beginning had been manipulative. Yes, it had nearly ended in disaster. But by choosing honesty over convenience, by valuing integrity over advantage, they'd transformed something dubious into something genuinely beautiful. Sometimes love needed a push to begin. Sometimes that push came from an over-enthusiastic sister with matchmaking delusions. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most unlikely circumstances could lead to the truest love. As Henry's hand tightened around hers, as he leaned close to whisper, I love you, beneath the table's cheerful noise, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that they would build something lasting. Not perfect, perhaps, not uncomplicated, but real, honest, and absolutely worth every chaotic moment it had taken to find each other. 1 year later, the nursery at Ashbourne Castle was flooded with late afternoon sunlight, illuminating the newly installed Gothic windows that Amelia had insisted upon. She stood by one of those windows now, cradling their infant son Thomas while Henry attempted to explain castle architecture to their utterly uninterested 3-month-old. You see, Thomas, the buttressing system is crucial for distributing the weight of the stone walls. Without proper buttressing, the entire structure becomes unstable. Darling, he's asleep. Henry looked down at their son, whose tiny face was peaceful in sleep, completely oblivious to his father's lecture. Ah, well, we'll continue the lesson later. Amelia laughed softly, crossing to sit beside him on the settee. He has his entire life to learn about medieval architecture. For now, perhaps we could simply enjoy him being small and perfect. He is rather perfect, isn't he? Henry's voice held wonder as he gently touched Thomas's tiny hand. I still can't quite believe we made him. I assure you we did. I have extensive memories of the process. Amelia! But Henry was grinning. A knock at the door interrupted them, and Beatrice swept in, followed by a heavily pregnant woman who could only be Lady Philip Ravenswood, formerly Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, married these past 6 months and radiantly happy despite being constantly uncomfortable. Don't get up, Beatrice said, settling carefully into a chair. I'm massive and ungainly, but I'm determined to visit my nephew. Hello, darling Thomas. Your Aunt Beatrice has arrived to spoil you outrageously. He's asleep, Henry said. Perhaps save the spoiling for later. Sleeping babies are the best kind. They can't protest when you admire them excessively. Beatrice gazed at Thomas with open affection. He has your eyes, Henry, and Amelia's nose. Perfect combination. We think so, Amelia said, smiling at her sister-in-law. How are you feeling? The baby must be due soon. 3 weeks, according to the physician. 3 weeks of waddling, constant backache, and Philip treating me like I'm made of spun glass. But her expression was soft with love. He's been wonderful, actually. Utterly devoted, and only slightly panicked about impending fatherhood. Where is Philip? Henry asked. Discussing estate management with your steward. He's determined to prove he can handle the Yorkshire properties flawlessly before the baby arrives. He's done excellent work, Henry admitted. Far better than I expected, if I'm honest. The accounts are impeccable and the tenants speak highly of him. I told you he was wonderful, Beatrice said smugly. But no one ever listens to me. We listen to you. We just verify everything you say because you have a history of manipulation and scheming. That was one time. One time I orchestrated a romance, and it worked out brilliantly for everyone. It nearly ended in disaster, Amelia reminded her. But it didn't. You and Henry are blissfully happy. I got to marry the man I love, and now we have beautiful baby Thomas to prove that my matchmaking genius is genuine. Beatrice leaned back with satisfaction. I should write a book about strategic romantic facilitation. Please don't, Henry and Amelia said simultaneously. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Thomas sleep, listening to the distant sounds of castle life continuing around them. Outside the window, the Devonshire hills rolled away in shades of summer green, and Amelia felt a bone-deep contentment she'd never imagined possible during that desperate season in London. Do you ever regret it? Henry asked quietly. The unconventional beginning? The manipulation and near disaster? Never, Amelia said immediately. Yes, it was messy and ethically dubious. Yes, we nearly lost everything before we'd even properly begun. But Henry, I wouldn't change a single moment. Because every step, every mistake, every choice led us here. To this. To you and me and Thomas, and a life built on honesty and genuine love. Even Beatrice's scheming? Even that, though I draw the line at her writing a matchmaking manual. Cowards, Beatrice muttered. Both of you. Philip appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up when he saw his wife. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Beatrice, you promised to rest after lunch. I'm resting. I'm sitting very restfully while visiting my nephew. That's not what the physician meant by rest. As Philip gently coaxed his protesting wife toward their chambers, as Henry carefully transferred the sleeping Thomas to his cradle, as afternoon sun continued streaming through those Gothic windows Amelia loved, she felt the story of their romance settling into its proper shape. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect romance unmarred by complications, but something better, something real. A love that began with manipulation, but transformed through honesty. A marriage built not on flawless courtship, but on the courage to be vulnerable and truthful, even when it risked everything. A family forged through imperfect choices that somehow, miraculously, led to perfect happiness. I love you, Henry whispered, pulling her close as they stood over their son's cradle. I love you too, Amelia whispered back, always, honestly, completely. And in that moment, in that castle that had stood for 8 centuries and would stand for centuries more, their love joined the foundation, adding to the legacy, becoming part of the history. One more story of unlikely beginnings transformed into certain endings. One more proof that sometimes the wrong carriage could lead to exactly the right destination. The end. Thank you so much for listening and staying with us until the very end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, we kindly invite you to subscribe, comment, leave a like, and share it with others who love tales of love, redemption, and unforgettable beginnings. Your support from the bottom of our hearts keeps us inspired to write more stories like this, full of courageous heroines, guarded dukes, and powerful love that overcomes the odds. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another story from our channel.